I am going to record something that probably or definitely falls in the TMI territory. So those of you who don't want to hear TMI, you are forewarned. But I'm going to share it anyway because I somehow feel led to do so. I'm Catholic, and I'm an observant Catholic, if not a devout Catholic. I'm observant in the sense that I go to Mass every day, that there is a holy day of obligation, and I observe the sacraments, and I go to confession. I'm not a good Catholic per se, because I'm anything but a saint. I'm pretty much the reverse of a saint in almost every way imaginable. But I'm an observant Catholic, and that is an important thing for me, even though I'm not someone who just sweats Catholicism. I'm not someone who comes on and talks about my faith all the time. Not that there's anything wrong with people who do that. I'm just obviously not one such person. I think it's great if your faith means that much to you, that's all you really ever focus on. I think that can be a really good thing. But anyway, that's a different subject. So I go to confession, and the TMI portion of confession is this. People have these, I think, people who aren't Catholic have this confused sense of what confession, the sacrament of confession, is all about, or what it's like, the whole vibe of it, the whole aesthetics of it. What you see in the movies is nothing like any confession I've ever experienced. What you see in the movies is this hyper aestheticized version of confession, where, and I guess the booths used to look like this. I guess this used to be the norm. Where you go in on one side, and then the priest opens the grate, and so you can see his face through the grating, sitting on the other side, and the priest calls you my son. That doesn't happen in any confession. It hasn't happened in any confession that I've taken part in, and I've been in many since I first converted to Catholicism some 15 years ago. So yeah, you're usually in a room with a priest on the other side of some some makeshift object or other, like a curtain or whatever, and usually you're kneeling, and you know that he's sitting on the other side of the curtain, let's just say. You also some places that they give you the choice of sitting down in a chair and facing the priest. I never ever want to do that. Never ever do I want to do that. There have been times where I've had to confess where the priest sees me visibly, because there's a whole lot of people in line, and some priests say, okay, well, I'll see some people over there on the altar. And that means you don't have the anonymity that you have in the confessional booth, which is awkward. But I've done it. I've done that before. But anyhow, so what do you confess? You confess anything that anything that you've done that's been sinful. And I'm not going to go into mortal sin and venial sin and all of that, though it's interesting. But you want to confess your sins, not because, and it's not some prurient thing. It's not like you're talking to this dirty old man, telling him all of your all of your juicy sins. I think that's another impression that people have of confession. That it's never. I mean, I know there have been a lot of bad priests. I'm sure that bad priests have used the confessional booth in bad, exploitative ways. But the whole idea behind confession is that the priest is a mediator between the layman and God. The priest is somebody who is descended from the apostolic succession. So just as Christ in the gospel after his resurrection, he breathes on the apostles and tells them, you now have the power to you have the power given from God to forgive sins or to refuse to forgive sins. In other words, you have the power to say to someone, you need to do this in order for your sins to be forgiven. That's your penance. And by the way, the confessional booth is sacrosanct. No priest is ever allowed to say what he hears from anyone when it's being confessed. So if the parishioner says, I committed 5 murders, the priest can't go to the police and say, I spoke to someone who confessed to committing 5 murders. That's not allowed. The confessional booth is sacrosanct. What the priest can say is, you cannot be forgiven until you confess your crimes to the authorities and start to do restitution for your crimes. But anyhow, lots of interesting things about the confessional, lots of misunderstandings, but anyhow, what I want to talk about is and here's where we finally get to the TMI. If you are a man, and if you were married and you find yourself not married anymore, or even if you're a single man who's never been married, but especially if you're a teenager or an adolescent, there is a particular sin that will manifest often, and that is self-abuse. I'm not going to be any more specific about what I mean when I say self-abuse, but hopefully you know what I mean in this case. So this is the most embarrassing thing, of course, to have to confess. But normally it goes by swimmingly. You just say it, and then you go on to you get it out of the way first, and then you go on to your other sins, and then you wrap it up. And usually the priest is just says, okay, that was a good confession, here's your penance, God bless you, and goodbye. But sometimes, and this is what I want to dwell on here, because priests, yes, they are part of the apostolic succession. If if you're Catholic, you believe this. You believe that they were ordained by God, and that the sacraments that they dispense are of God and from God. That doesn't mean that you like them. It doesn't mean that you have to like them. It doesn't mean that they're good guys necessarily. There have been a lot of bad men who are priests, as the headlines will attest. And there's plenty of corruption within the hierarchy of the church. Who would deny that? But there's plenty of corruption in plenty of other places as well. And the world's media does seem to like to fixate on the church more than other places, which is interesting, isn't it? But that's going in a totally different direction. I have sometimes had priests, when I've confessed this thing that is very embarrassing to confess, but I know I have to confess it because if you follow Catholic theology, the only appropriate use of sex is within wedlock. So married sex is good all the time. Have it as much as you want. Do whatever you want, you and your wife. That's all good. And enjoy it, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying it. That's what people have to understand. Catholics don't, in spite of what you may have heard, Catholics are not against sex. In fact, I'm much more leery of sex than the typical Catholic is. But it has to be expressed properly within wedlock. And if you're not in a wedded situation right now, as I am not, but I once was, well, I don't think it necessarily is bad for the priest to ask you questions. It would be nice if the question could be, why are you doing this? Why is this a sin that you find yourself indulging in from time to time? That would be a worthwhile question. But instead, what I often get are, what I've heard different times at different places is like, okay, well, when you feel this, when you feel tempted in this way, maybe you should open the door to your room and listen to music, or maybe you should go for a walk, or maybe you should do this or that, to get rid of this temptation. Take yourself out of the situation where you'd be tempted. Obviously, I'm guessing this priest is going by his own experience, because priests are supposed to be celibate, and obviously these are the things that work for him in that way. I've also had a priest tell me something like, well, maybe it's good to find a friend, a buddy that you can call when you're in need, when you feel like you're about to slip up and fall, and sort of like with Alcoholics Anonymous, where you have a sponsor, Wankers Anonymous. What? I don't want to talk to another guy about how I feel like I'm about to abuse myself. I don't want to do that. What in the world? But it was like he was trying to connect it with this kind of I don't know, with the AA model, or people, guys who work out together, they get up and go to the gym and keep each other honest at the gym, and he sort of envisioned that maybe, okay, you can get somebody, you can help each other out in this way. No, thank you. I didn't say that to him, but I just sort of listened to him and let him finish. But see, what I don't think it's understood is that this sin is this activity is indulged in because you had this experience with your wife that for many years, and then it's gone. When your marriage ends and you separate from your wife, it's gone, and you miss it, and so you indulge in it solitarily sometimes, perhaps non-solitarily in some cases, you know, in a fornication type of situation. I know I'm being really really guarded in my use of terminology here, but you know, it would be nice if I would have any kind of critique of the priests who have seen me and who have heard my sins and heard of this particular kind of sin, which is, you know, I believe that it is sinful. That is why I'm confessing it. If there were more of an understanding of, you know, you do it because you choose to do it. It's not like, oh, I might do it unless I open the door to my room, and now I won't do it anymore. You know, you close the door to your room, you lock the door to your room because you want to do it. You want to experience this kind of release. So it's a deliberate act. It's not like it's something that just comes over you. You know, and the reason why is because you have this need, this wish to have this connection with somebody that you no longer have. So you know, and male anatomy being what it is, you know, it's semen being what it is, without getting too graphic, you know, the more you refrain, the more the buildup there is, and the more, you know, the more you think about it, the harder it is to escape the temptation to do it. But when you do it, it's because you want to do it. Okay, so you know that it's sinful even while you're doing it, and you know you're going to have to confess it. So I don't know. I just think there, and I think I'm going to record another video about the confessional, and you know, because it really is an interesting thing to talk about, to dwell on a little bit, both for Catholics and non-Catholics alike. Unless you're talking to people who are just anti-Catholic, who just think that the church is the whore of Babylon, and you know, which I know there are probably some people out there who believe that. But who I don't think will get anything out of me talking about these kinds of things. But if you're just interested in the sociology of it, if you will, or the anthropology of it, you know, the culture of it, it's not for me to tell a priest how to do his job. I do think that certain kinds of queries when it comes to this particular phenomenon are just laughably irrelevant. And I don't know if, you know, when you're somebody who's determined, who's already, you know, you're celibate, you've got your mind, you've made your mind up to live the celibate life. That's different from somebody who has been living the married life and then suddenly finds himself celibate. You know, there needs to be more of an understanding of that, I think. There needs to be more of an understanding of, you know, why. Because I think ultimately the reason why I'm recording this, even though it's an embarrassing thing to talk about, I don't think I'm the only one. I can't be the only one. It would really embarrass me if I were the only one.